You're the main character in your story, right?
Yep.
So you are, in your story, you are the main character, and you're going to decide the words and the language and setting and where it goes. But along with that, there are other people in your story who are characters. So you've got to look at who those people are.
This is the Knockin' Doors Down podcast. I'm your host, Jason LaChance, and here we unlock stories of resilience, triumph, and transformation. Hey, please hit that subscribe button on whatever platform you're on. And while you're at it, why not leave a rating, a review, or a thumb up on YouTube and a comment in the video. And my guest on this episode is Nina Sossamon Pogue. She's an influential thought leader whose experience as a communicator powers her ability to share her framework for handling any challenge. Nina's had to adapt through a lifetime of major challenges. She openly shares her struggles and how she overcame the challenges along the way. Nina is a former member of the USA Gymnastics team in the 1980s, an award-winning journalist and Emmy award-winning television news anchor. After leaving TV, she spent 12 years in tech. She's also the author of This Is Not the End, Strategies to Get You Through the Worst Chapters of Your Life, as well as the host of the podcast, This Seriously Sucks, the right podcast when life goes seriously wrong. Nina and I talk a variety of topics, including Go Be Yourself, Everyone is Taken, how her life at one point was like a country song, what is this framework, T.I.P.S. We also talk, if you want the drama to end in your life, stop giving people things to talk about. Plus, we discuss how former athletes have an incredibly valuable skill, being coachable. We talk all that and more on this episode of Knockin' Doors Down. Nina Sossamon Pogue, thank you for joining me on Knockin' Doors Down.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me on.
It's weird, this life that you live and you start looking into things. And like we got to talk about before recording, I'm in my third year of continual sobriety and new stuff is hitting the fan, so to speak. And then coming across you, I'm like, well, hopefully she wants to talk to me. So no, thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah. And mine has been a reset, not from addiction, but from just big life-altering events in my life. And it's been one reset, one pick myself up, get going again after another. In my book, I've got 5 big, what I call my big thises, like this thing happens. And I use the word this because whatever you're going through is your this.
Yeah.
Like everybody's got a thing that they're battling or trying to get past, and it's different for all of us. So I just say this, and that's why the name of my book is This Is Not the End, as in whatever this is that you're in the middle of. Yeah.
Yeah. We've all survived those toughest days, right?
Right.
Well, that makes me want to, because I start my day with gratitude, at least 3 to 5 things that I'm grateful for to try to be gratitude. What about you today? Give me 3 things that you're grateful for.
Oh, 3. Okay. Well, I'm always grateful for that my children are in a good place. I think any parent will tell you you're as happy as your saddest kid, you know? So I've got 3 adulting kids who have survived me being their mother and are out there doing great things. So I'm happy that my children are all really healthy. I've got my oldest is on a flight back from London today where he did some big stuff over there speaking. So in the medical field. So I'm super proud of that. I'm gratitude for the health and the happiness of my children. That's always number 1. Certainly right now it is. Number 2 is my health. I've had my own health challenges over the last few years. You know, aging will do that to you. You're not there yet that I am.
I'm 45, so
it's not for sissies. Well, I'm more than 10 years ahead of you. It's not for sissies. So anyway, I'm grateful for my health. I'm feeling really good today, and have had a good week health wise, and worked out every day and eating healthy. I'm just grateful for my health right now and that part of the life that I'm in, because it hasn't always been that way. And my third would be I'm grateful that I live where I do. And it's getting into summertime and I've got a few days ahead. I can go walk on the beach when I want to and kind of reset. It resets my soul. Yeah. So I'm grateful for where I live today too, because I'm headed into a few days where I can spend some time along the water and be in that space. And it's just not everybody gets to see that. And so I'm always full of gratitude that I get to be on this spot on the planet.
Yeah, I love that. And it's interesting what you said about there, you know, concerning some things and challenges. I mean, you were a thriving gymnast, and I think it's such an interesting thing that people always, here's what I say when I speak at high schools to teenagers: don't compare your insides to other people's outsides. because
That's a great one.
even amidst what was going on, you were still facing some challenges, but outwardly, hey, things look great and bright. And I mean, you're a beautiful lady inside and out and all these things. And it's not always the case. And I think that's that struggle, right?
Yeah. And I always told my kids growing up, go be you, everybody else is taken. Just because we always compare. That was always my line. I like your line inside outside a lot. People, as I got older, people got to know me through my achievements, my accolades. So for your audience, I was on the US Gymnastics team. I moved away from home at 13. I was on the US Gymnastics team, traveled all over the world, back with Mary Lou Retton in that crowd. I was a D1 athlete. I competed at LSU. Then I went and got to television. I was an award-winning journalist. Then I got an Emmy Award for the best newscaster in the Southeast, huge accolades. And then I got out of TV, got into tech, and I worked in the tech space and took a company public. So was part of a team who did. So I've had big success and became an author and a speaker and all this stuff. That's what people know me for. But what I'm also known for is I speak about none of that. I speak about all the crap below, what I call below the line. Like if that's your resume, if you draw your timeline of your life, that's your resume. That's all above the line. I talk about all the crap below the line that you don't hear about. So yes, I was on the US Gymnastics team, but I didn't make the team after being on the cover of magazines and being, an Olympic hopeful and living that dream for so many years. Then you don't make the team, and it's a lot of shame and guilt, and you don't know what to do with your life. And then, yes, I competed at LSU and had a career there. But then my freshman year blew out my knee, lost my sport, didn't know who I was without that, made a lot of bad choices, would get up and have take my Percocet with a shot of Jaeger and had to be to physical therapy. It was not my best choices. But I finished school. I like to say I got out of school in booze and boys. That's what I graduated in. Had a lot of making up to do. But then I made some bad choices, but made it through. And then I found the newsroom and I fell in love with television. But, in my 30s, I had a stint where I got married and had kids and things like that. But in my 30s, I got divorced. I also got let go from the TV station that I worked at. I won our city's favorite news anchor 7 years in a row on a Thursday. And on a Friday, I got called in and they just said, we're exercising the option in your contract to let you go. So I very publicly got let go and just budget cuts. I didn't do anything wrong, but again, shame, embarrassment. What do I do with my life? But I figured it out and I picked myself up and I got back into television at another TV station. And that's where I won the Emmy Award for Best Newscaster in the Southeast, because it was a little bit of a poke in the face to the people who let me go.
Yeah,
I worked really hard, like a little FU to them. So anyway, I did really well there, but then I was involved in a life-altering traumatic accident that hit me way below the line again, and it really had me battling with my mental health and not wanting that timeline to go on. I had a lot of suicidal ideation and thought about taking my life several times. And I was 37. I was like, I had babies at home and a whole life ahead of me still, but went through a very difficult time, but got out of that and that's what I talk about, how you get out of those lows and then get back up to the highs again. And when I talk about my 30s, sometimes I'll say, my life became a country song in my early 30s. My marriage fell apart, lost my job, and then my dog died. My black lab died right in the middle of all of it. So, yeah.
Knocking Doors Down by Carlos Vieira. Now available wherever you get audiobooks.
I wasn't done partying, and I didn't want the binge to end. I think I knew that when I finally got home, I'd have to face what I had done, and I wasn't ready to do that. Being responsible for my actions wasn't something I was looking forward to. I had abandoned my wife and baby, my family, and my business. I wanted to avoid the shame of returning to what I had left behind. Even though I was not yet going home, I wasn't sure I had enough resources to continue the binge.
Click the link in the podcast description to find out more. Yeah, it's as you said, this thing. And it's so fascinating when you shared that. I I completely related to you in exactly what my addiction was for me, because people knew me as the fun party guy that was
Yep.
going to be a good time. And that's what my identity was, wrapped in the things I did.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
and it's tough to really, I mean, I still struggle with it at times, hey, we all like a little validation. You're the guy that the great podcast with Charlie Sheen, and okay, cool, thank you. But that's not who I am.
Right.
Like at my core, that has, my values led me to doing these things, but it's not who I am.
Yeah. And I heard recently somebody say, it's not what you're going to do, it's who you're going to be. So go out in the world and be being. Don't be doing, be being whatever you're going to be, which I think is kind of a cool concept. I think it was somebody did it at a graduation speech recently. I don't know who it was though, but go. It's not all about what you're going to do in life. It's about who you're going to be in life. But that is a struggle. And I think about like when I went through this, and you probably are a little before the social media thing too, so you didn't have all of that in your face. But I call mine public pain, because here I was on the cover of magazines, and then I didn't make the Olympics, and here I was big. There's actually an article that I show when I speak of me blowing out my knee in a gymnastics meet, and they're holding me down on the mat. I'm yelling profanities. Luckily, you can't see that in the article, but when I blew my knee out, and the very public cover of the college paper, getting fired from television, very public. The other traumatic event, I went from reporting to the news to being in the news. So the public part of it is really key. And you and I didn't have that when we were the social media when we were younger. I happen to be a public person, but I worry about people now, especially young people, because your persona, like you as podcast, like it's on your TikTok or your Instagram or your Facebook, whatever it is that you're using, you very much identify with it. Back then for me, like in college, when I blew out my knee, it was like my sweatshirt and my bumper sticker on my car, but it's still how I identified. It wasn't the same as it is now. Now, it doesn't matter who you are. You have a level of public pain. Everybody's part of everybody's story. So the public pain that comes with making a big change in your life, even a positive change. And you've known that because some people get on board with you and some people don't. So that public facing part of our world just makes it all harder now.
Yeah, it really does. And it's interesting you bring that up, because it's funny, more people are, recovering out loud or speaking about their mental health struggles or whatever they are a little more. I'm glad to see the grammar of it change to where it's not woe is me, but hey, this is what I'm facing. This is how I'm getting through it. And ironically, I was doing that 7, 8 years ago and getting really shunned. Like, I had having someone in a recovery meeting like, dude, you don't belong here because we don't share about this. And it's like, no, I protect your anonymity, not mine. It's,
Yeah.
our bylaws of this AA meeting are that.
Yeah.
So let me ask then, how did you get beyond that? This is not the end moment for you. I mean, kids at home, it's, serious traumatic event. And that suicidal ideation, for anyone that's not suffered it, just the best way I can put it is the other day, Nina, I'm coming home from the nonprofit that I work at. Big lifted pickup trucks in front of me and a carcass for a big rig tire. They drove over it. I couldn't with my car, tore out the front end underneath my car. And so in the suicidal ideation, which I still struggle with, is it's not that bad. I can fix it. I can buy a new car as a second option, or C, I can kill myself. And that's how it works.
Yeah, it's scary stuff. During that time, I'd already been like struggling. I had 3 young kids. I'd gone through a divorce, and I was working nights. I worked 2 to midnights in a newsroom. And so I was like I would drive back to the television station and think, I'm so tired. And, if I just like veered into that tree, like someone would think it was an accident. I just need this to be done. So I'd had that kind of thought before, which if you're a parent out there, or if you're anybody who's struggled, I don't feel like you're the only one that thinks that way. It's weird, horrible thinking, but you're not alone. It's from people I've talked to, it goes through a lot of our minds. Some people more fleeting than others. So I'd had those thoughts, but when I went through this traumatic event, I had to go back on TV after a while, and everybody knew me in this new space and knew what had happened to me. So I had a hard time wanting to go back on TV, but the time was up when I could be away. And I can remember like standing in front of the mirror with a razor in my hand and just going, if I just slice up my face, I won't be pretty and they won't want me back on, you know? Or I could take like you, or I could take this razor and just be done. I'm so tired of being sad and mad and angry at the world. And I don't even feel anything anymore. You get to that point where you just can't feel. I'm like, so it was a bad space. And I can look back now, 15 years later, after this event, I wrote my book. And what had happened is I had become the person people came to when their lives weren't going well, when something big happened. You know, it could be a neighbor. I remember opening the door once and there was a neighbor standing at my door and he had like 2 beers in his hand and tears running down his face. And I was like, dude, what's up? And he's like, I just got fired and I can't tell my wife and the kids are home and I don't know what to do. And can you help me? And I was like, I got you. Come on in. We went and sat on the end of the dock and worked it through. And I knew I was helping people. And I became that person that they would show up in my space. I had a friend whose husband died and she ended up I'm like, I'm not a therapist. I don't work in HR. This is not my space. But I became this go-to person for people going through tough times. And so I stepped away from my corporate job after some real big success and when my kids were off in college and I did the homework. So now I actually know what I did. And I've interviewed a lot of people and there's the commonalities that people go through. So I've created a 4-part framework to share that with people. And it's some neuroscience, some cognitive behavior therapy, which, you know, and then it's some stoicism. It's a lot of pieces. It's kind of my own mashup of that, but it's a real simple 4-part framework that you can put any situation you're in through, and it gets you to the other side of it. So being able to like be on your show and other places and share that framework and go, look, there's nothing that you can't get through. Yeah. Absolutely. And how magical it is on the other side of this. So that I can tell you what it is. I mean, I can go through it.
I want to jump in. Okay. I want to jump into it with you. Absolutely. Please.
Okay. So I call it this framework. I know, really tricky. It took me a long time to come up with that. So in my mass marketing, this framework. But people are always asking me for tips. So the acronym I use is TIPS, you know, because when you're going through something big, you don't need to do a lot of extra mental gymnastics to figure it out. So it's TIPS and it's T.I.P.S. and it's put it in a timeline, isolate it, pull in the right people and craft a story. So timeline, isolate, people, story. So the timeline piece is actually my favorite. And I think it's probably the most important for your viewers if they're in a tough spot right now. And it's this concept I share with you earlier with, like, if you put your life in a timeline, if you take a piece of paper and draw a line across it and go 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, and just put dots across, and you can put whatever's happening to you on that timeline. Like you can put a dot on a date on that timeline between 0 and 100. Say you live to be 100. Which I need to drink less wine and take better care of myself. But say I live to be 100. So you can put those dots there. You can put whatever's happening to you right there. So you're said 47, you could put a dot on 47. And then you can go back and actually put all the things that happened to you. And I say you put your resume stuff above the line, you know, that when you got a degree or you started your podcast or when you had your kids, you got married, all the stuff above when you hit your first year of sobriety, whatever, you put that above the line. And then below the line, you put all of the, stuff that you go through. So that timeline piece, you can put it on that timeline. And the timeline thinking is take your this, shrinking it down. It's not your whole life. It is just a dot on this line somewhere. And where is it on your timeline? And then I have people go, okay, everything happened like up to this point. But when you hit that dot on that line, the whole timeline ahead is blank. You have so much blank space out ahead of you. You have 10 more years than I do out ahead of you. There's so much time ahead of you. And you can do the math and you can look at it this way. So when I lost my sport, here's some fun math for you. First, the whole concept of time is kind of fun to talk about. And think about this before I do the math with you. Think about when you were 10 years old. Where'd you live when you were 10? You said you had a rough childhood, but where were you?
My parents had a little ranch property in a small town called Aromas, California.
Okay, so you, little tiny guy in Aromas, California. I could just see little Jason running around. Okay, 10 years old. Think about summertime when you're 10 years old. Summertime when you're 10, you're running around. For me, I was in Orange Park, Florida. It was riding bikes with my friends. It was playing kickball in the streets. It was, different time. But summertime when I was 10 was this long stretch of time. Didn't it seem like it? Like you had to wait to go off to summer camp, or you had all this time with your friend before school started again. It was a magical long stretch of time. Yeah, when you're 10 years old. Now think about summer when you're 40. It doesn't seem quite the same, does it?
Yeah.
It comes really quickly and it goes really quickly. And you're like, are the days getting short? Like, how did that go by so fast? For a lot of parents, like the kids come throw their book bags down. And then next thing you know, it's back to school shopping and you're picking that book bag up. And for me, I was finding like half a moldy peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I never unpacked the backpacks. I was not mother of the year. I don't, but it goes by really fast. So the thinking here is when you're 10, that year of your life, when you're 10 years old, is 1/10 of everything you know. That's your whole life experience, 1/10. When you're 40, that year of your life is 1/40th of everything you know. Mm-hmm. So if it's a piece of pie, it's 1/10 of a piece of pie, decent size, or you get that pie and you get 1/40th, like a little tiny sliver of pie. Same 365 days. Every day is a smaller part of the whole of your life. Every day you live is a smaller part of the whole of your life. And you want that pie to get bigger. You want that timeline to keep going. So that thinking around how big something feels when it happens to you is really fascinating. It depends on when it happens to you in your life. So to do the math part for you. So think about our timeline. When I blew out my knee in college, I was 19. I thought my life was over. It was like college, like my life is over. I wasted my whole life in the gym. I never went to high school games or had any fun in high school. All I did was train. I'd never been on dates and partied or anything. I feel like I wasted my whole life in the gym when I was 19. And at 19, gymnastics was 78% of what I knew in life. I've been doing it since I was tiny. I was 4 years old. So 78% of my life was gymnastics. Of course, it felt like everything. Mm-hmm. It's what my life experience was. I knew that. That was my whole life. Now, by the time I'm 50 and my kids are leaving for college and I've been in television and I've been in tech and I've been married and divorced and remarried, like all of it. By the time I'm 50, gymnastics, which was everything, was only 28% of my life. And if I lived to be 100, again, which I get to drink less wine, take better care of myself, but then it would be 15% of my life, 16% of my life. Right. So when you look at it that way, you can see how everything can feel so big at the time, but it's not your whole life. You can probably look at your time when you really struggled with the addiction. In those years are going to be like a piece. Mm-hmm. When you get to be 60, 70 years old, that's going to be just a fraction. It's going to be a thing you went through. It's going to be a story you tell. So that's the timeline thinking that I have folks do. Like it's when you put it on that timeline, it is just a bad chapter in your life. It is not your whole life, no matter how big and horrible it is. Yeah. And there's all this blank space ahead. So that's the T. That's the timeline. You get that?
I do. And I love visual illustration, so it works perfectly for me. And I think I'm going to have to do this when we get off and definitely implement it. And I think so many people, this would be so helpful for everybody. And goodness, now if you're speaking out here, I'm going to have to in California, I'm going to have to come find you and meet up and see you speak. But I think it's so valuable for people to look at life that way and really break it down. And I haven't in a long time. So thank you, because it really does illustrate how small of a fraction certain things are. They really are.
And they feel so big at the time, and that is normal, and that is okay.
Have you dug into the archives of past Knockin' Doors Down podcast episodes? The Knockin' Doors Down podcast archive is available to you for free. Check it out. Here's a snippet from when Charlie Sheen was on the podcast.
AA is not the best place for a famous atheist. I kept looking for that fucking chapter. But it's not a one size fits all. Sure. It's like saying that we all think the same, like our brains are built the same. They're just not. Right. Yeah. There's such uniqueness involved.
Check out this episode and so many more in the Knockin' Doors Down archive. And while you're at it, hit that subscribe button, give this video a thumb up, leave a comment, and share with somebody else that you know will get value out of the Knocking Doors Down podcast.
My big thing is it's okay to not be okay. It is just not okay to stay that way. And no one's coming. It's up to you to go forward. No one's coming to fix it. So it's okay to not be okay. We all have crappy stuff below the line, crappy chapters, but it's not okay to stay there. So you have to keep moving forward. And that's where this framework comes in. So that's the T. Put it in the timeline, look at it, try to build some perspective around where this fits. And then the second part is isolate. So if you draw it on your timeline, I always say put a line in front, like put the dot there and then put a line in front of it and behind it. You can't talk about anything but what's happening right now. Because any good therapist will tell you if you're living in the past, all the stuff before that line. See, I edited, I said stuff. All the stuff before that line, then that's where that's where depression lives. You know, the woulda, shoulda, coulda, shouldn't have married that guy, shouldn't have done this thing, you know, shouldn't have hung out with those people. Like all of that is the past, and that's where depression lives on that side of the timeline. And then if you look at the other side of the timeline from your dot, and you are catastrophizing or worst case scenario and what ifs and what ifs and what ifs, that's where anxiety lives. Yeah. You know, so anxiety's on the other stuff. So you have this like magical, isolated like part right now you could do something with. And that is where the magic happens. That's what you can actually take some action on and do something with in that moment. So the isolate piece, sometimes I'll tell folks, like I'll show them a picture and say, is this glass half full or half empty? And what would you say?
Half full.
Right. Because you want to be the half full guy. Like we all want to be that guy. Right. So, but it's not, it's a 6-ounce glass with 3 ounces of water. Yeah. You got to take yourself out of it completely. Like it just is the thing. So without projecting our own emotions or the past or the future or trying to be something, that isolate is just what exactly are we dealing with right now? And then we can figure out what we can take some action on. So that's the isolate piece. Got that?
I like it. Yeah. I like it because, you know, this buddy, RJ, gentleman who came on here and we became fast friends, you know, he really talked about like the timeline stuff as data points. You know, he wasn't talking in the terms of timeline, so I'm amalgamizing this here.
Right.
But it really is. It's so funny you bring up that, you know, we say often past depression, future anxiety. This morning I got up and like, oh God, I got a recording. I got to knock it out of the park. This lady's doing awesome things. Hopefully she the anxiety kicked in. I still struggle with that anxiety. And I just had to sit and do some breath work, some deep breathing and go, it's going to go how it's going to go. So embrace the moment.
And think about it. Any anxiety you have on like, oh, she's so accomplished. It was totally unwarranted. You wasted that energy because I'm just me. You know, like again, it was wasted energy. You did not have to do that.
Story. And I know we're going to get there. So did you have anything more that you want to do on I before we jump into P?
No, that's it. I can go on forever, but that gets big picture what the I is. Yeah.
All right. Give us P.
Okay. P is people. And you know this as well as I do. So once you put something on it, something happens, the big this, you put it on your timeline and you isolate it. What can you do? Then you have to assess the people around you. Who's helping and who's hurting? And you can put all your people on that list and put them in one category or the other. Who's helping and who's hurting? And that's editing. So pulling in. And so if you don't have enough people helping, finding some people to help. I'm pro therapy. I always say too, and I don't know if you had the same concept or share it, but I'm going to say it because I believe in it. Therapy's like dating people. If you go to a therapist and you don't like them, do not go on a second date. There's a lot of fish in the sea. Just go find somebody else. Took me quite a few different therapists at different points in my life to find somebody that I liked.
Oh, yeah. I've had people, I went to a 12-step meeting. I don't like it. How many did you go to? One, go to a different meeting.
Right. Find different people. The people are important. The people who have success, who get through tough times, who do big things, they have people around them. Think about athletes. They have coaches. During the pandemic, when it hit, the CEOs all called each other. Like you pulled your people in to get through tough times together. So trying to go through something tough alone it's not successful. It's not a good idea. If you want to actually move the needle, again, it's okay to not be okay, but it's not okay to stay that way. You have to pull in people. So the people part is really important. And along with that people part, you're the main character in your story, right?
Yep.
So you are, in your story, you are the main character, and you're going to decide the words and the language and setting and where it goes. But along with that, there are other people in your story who are characters, So you've got to look at who those people are. And I know for some of the parents, it's going to be shocking. You are not the main character in your children's story. You're not the main character in anybody else's story, but you are a character.
Yeah.
You're a character in everybody's story that you interact with. And how are you showing up? Are you the good guy, the bad guy? Are you the villain? Like, what would they call you? What words would they use in the story of their book? Like, what does that look and feel like? So that people piece is editing your people and how you're showing up for people, and being mindful of that. The people piece is so important. And I also share this because it's so important to younger people today, and even you and I and everybody else in this space who's listening to this, because I guess you could call this social media. You have so many influences now when it comes to people that aren't directly accessible to you, but whoever you let influence you, whatever influencer you're following or hanging out and looking at or letting their thoughts get into your brain, you're in charge of that too. Like, listen to more things like this where there's some good stuff coming into your brain and less of the bad stuff. I have a thing. My husband thinks I'm crazy right now. I'm on this kick right now where I'll like, if I have a tough day or a lot of bad stuff I have to deal with, or we watch scary movies. He likes like violent, scary movies. But I'll come before I go to bed. I'll open an app, and he's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm watching baby goats." Wait, and just a warning, if you ever pull up a baby goat video and you start watching them, the algorithm finds you and you will get baby goat videos all the time. So,
oh, yes.
But they will make me laugh. But I put that in my brain. Like, that's, it's not doing any harm. I need a little good dopamine, laugh out loud. I put on some stupid baby goats.
Yeah. Well, and I'm glad you bring up that word influence, because the reality is we're all under the influence of something. You know, people like to think, "Oh, I'm not." No, everybody's under the influence of something and you do get to choose if it's positive or negative stuff.
Yep.
You really can. But the important part of doing that is, of course, your consciousness thereof, which I think
Right.
T and I lead you to that place of consciousness where you can really take I mean, we can't be objective about ourselves, but as possibly objective as you can, and really take a look at that, your life, the people in your proximity, everything else. I mean, a common thing for me is, you know, people asking, "Oh, how'd you get certain people that were negative out of your life?" I said, once I was loud about what I was doing and changing in my life, they did me a favor and they just went the F away. I didn't even have to ask. It was just clear that my energy had changed, and there was nothing more I had to let them leech off of, for lack of a better word, and I had no desire to leech off of them.
Yeah, I remember at one point really stepping away from the drama of everything, you know, after my traumatic accident, and I was like, I am done with the drama of this. I am working on. I'm moving forward. I with love and with kindness and inclusion and pulling everybody in, and like, that's where my brain is. And if you don't want to be part of that, you know, this train is moving on. And it was very quickly the people who wanted to just talk about me and not really be there for me, they went elsewhere when I stopped giving them stuff to talk about. Yeah.
Yep.
So your people is really, really important. And you edit those. You're in charge. Again, you're in charge of editing this. You're more in control of what goes into your life than anybody else. Not your boss, not the president, not your spouse or your kids or your partner. Like, you have more say over what goes into your world than anybody else. You're in charge of it. So the people part's key. That's the people part.
Yeah. God, I'm trying to remember who it is. Jacko Willink, maybe. I think the Navy SEAL, his book started with "Everything in your life is your fault."
Yeah.
And to me, that was mind blowing. It's like, what? Yeah. You live in Kansas and your house got blown away by a tornado. Why the heck did you live in Tornado Alley? You know, or whatever. And it was like, damn, that's cold, Jacko. No, that's exactly what I needed to hear.
It is. I do a lot of conference speaking, and I spoke at a conference last week, and it was a room of about 1,200 women, mostly, probably 80%, maybe 90% of women at this conference. And they're all they work in the healthcare industry. So pretty clean cut, you know, normal, mixed race, gender, mixed races and ages and stuff, but all pretty buttoned up professional women. And I get to this point in my talk, and I leaned over and I looked, and I was talking about, you're in control of your life. I leaned over and I looked at this woman who was sitting there beautifully dressed with her hair perfect and her makeup perfect and everything. And I said, "What is your name?" And I think she said, I don't remember. I think she said Charlotte. And I'm not sure, but Charlotte. And I said, "Well, Charlotte, tomorrow you could go home from this conference, look at your husband and say, 'I'm done,' sell everything you own, buy an RV, cut your hair short, dye it purple, and get a face tat. Like, and just drive across the country seeing the world's largest roadside attractions." I said, and she's looking at me with these giant eyes and everybody's laughing. And I said, you have more control. You could totally like leave Kansas if there's a tornado. You could do whatever you want. It's your life. You have free will. You could just go totally off the rails. Now, I don't suggest my dear friend Charlotte did that, but you could go totally off the rails. I usually try to find something that's totally opposite of whatever my audience is,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Let's jump into the S.
Oh, S is your story. So that is the words in your head that come out of your mouth and become your story. Mm-hmm. And we all do this. And some of us are better at it than others. I would put myself in the not so great category when it comes to this. I have to work on it. But this is that self-sabotage language we use. Yeah, you can hear it. Like this always, there's like overgeneralization. This always happens to me, that kind of thing we do. When we do catastrophizing, everything's ruined. This is the worst. This is never going to work out. That language, when you hear yourself saying it's really, really dangerous. And jumping to conclusions. They haven't texted me back, so they must hate me. They hate me. They think I'm an idiot because they didn't text me back. Or exaggerating. I've got 5 million things to do. I've got 50 loads of laundry. Like, do you really? Has anyone actually done 50 loads of laundry?
My favorite is I'm the worst person ever. Really?
Yes.
I don't know. If you go look at history, I think not.
I can find a few probably on the same street. So there you go. And so anyway, or belaboring things. There's all that self-sabotage language. And the concept is if you're using it in your head and it comes out of your mouth, it becomes your world. So if, you have a horrible day at work and you come home and, or just you have a bad day and the person around you says, "Hey, what's going on? Are you okay?" You can go one or two ways. So say a mom like me walks in or a parent like you walks in and their child's like, "Are you okay? You seem grumpy." You could say, "Well, I'm an idiot and I work with a bunch of idiots and everything's ruined and probably going to get fired. And we're probably going to have to cancel Christmas." But you wouldn't because it's a child. You would probably say something like, "I'm just grumpy because I had a hard day, but Mommy's smart. I work with smart people and we'll figure it out. It's not like we're going to have to cancel Christmas or anything." We just have to change the language because it does become our world.
Oh, yeah.
That story piece, it becomes your story. If you're the one that's always saying everything's ruined, or I hate this thing, or I hate this town, or this always happens to me, or that becomes your world that you live in.
Yeah. Yeah. Your perpetuating thoughts become your perpetuating actions, thus becomes your life.
Becomes your story. Those are the words that go in your book.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I had an instance of that recently, a person that I was doing work for, and they put this project on hold, and it was a nice chunk of money. And then it was like immediately like, it goes back to my illogical brain, and that stinking thinking of, common for addicts is, "Oh my God, less money. I'm going to lose my car that I just had to buy and my house, and my girlfriend's going to leave and my kids aren't going to want to talk to me." Granted, that all happened in 7 seconds and I was able to get back on track, but the thoughts are still there.
Always. And people look at me with my success and I'm like, no, I'm never good enough or smart enough or look right or connected to the right people. I'm making all the wrong choices. Like, I've got to this point in my life where I just don't have a filter anymore, and I'm just me. And if you don't like me, that's kind of where I am. But it took me a lot of years to get here.
Yeah.
It took me a lot of years of people pleasing and all those worries to get to a point where, I can, and financial success where I could get to the point where like, it's not going to crush me at this point. My kids are adulting and out and doing things, and cars and houses are paid for. It's like houses. I have a house. Don't get me wrong. It's a little one. But that's paid for and done. So it's a different place to be in. But that language in your head can be so dangerous. And we're all guilty of it. And I have found if I am intentional about it, like I get up in the morning and go, today I'm going to say nice things to myself, and I actually out loud say some nice things to myself. because I'm not around a lot of people. A lot of times I'm here in my home office and I'll have to go, I'll walk by a mirror and go, you look good today. I'll say it out loud. Or I'll write something down. I have gotten a little weirdly connected to ChatGPT. I find myself talking to it. I'll write something and they'll spit it back out and then I'll fix it and I'll be right. I'm like, oh, that's so good. That's really good. Nina, you're good. But to be kinder to ourselves, to figure out, like some people call it self-love or whatever, just to be a little nicer to ourselves in the language that we use in our heads.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that, again, goes back to that consciousness of it, right? Because for so many of us, that negative self-talk, it didn't start out in our voice. It was put there at some point long ago. You competitive gymnastic, I can only imagine, as somebody that I went up to the college level for basketball. It didn't make it, but man, I had some summer league coaches and playing and working with professional NBA players. They were effing pretty hard on me. I mean, they weren't abusive, but the line was pretty close.
Basketball's a tough one. My middle son played basketball, and those coaches did curse and scream a lot. But yeah, I was in a sport where you're trying to be perfect.
Yeah,
and all they do all day long is tell you what's wrong. This isn't right. This isn't right. Fix this. Do that. And I had eating disorders. I was never thin enough, so I had all those issues that go with it. Like that sport breeds some weird stuff in your head that you really have to work on to get to the other side of. Yeah.
Yeah. And how did you, in retrospect, if I can ask, how did you do some of that processing? Because I've had conversations on here that, this purpose is, hey, mental health struggles, you're not the only one. Here's different ways people have gotten through. But how did you confront those different things? Because, I see it more and more with young ladies, just especially the eating disorder, like you're saying, the social media and,
It's so hard. And this generation's getting a little better about not body shaming, but back in the day, it was not a thing. It was all about the size of your body. And I think that we also had a whole generation where we didn't talk about these sort of things and how unhealthy it was. So that wasn't good either. For me, I got therapy, I got help. I was really worried I was going to pass it along to my kids because, I have a daughter, I have 2 boys and a girl, and my daughter's 25 now. And I was so worried I was going to make her be like me because I had such a weird relationship with food. But we do this. Think about this in our society. For those of you who don't know much about eating disorders or the eating part of it, and it's an addiction, or it's a way your brain is wired in a lot of ways. So when you're little and you're like, oh, you got an A, we're going to stop and get ice cream. Oh, it's your birthday, we're going to eat a cake. Oh, congratulations, we're going to go out and have drinks. Like food is attached to all the wins and celebration in our lives. Mm-hmm. And so it becomes this dopamine hit, like this hit that you get because something good happens and you get that. And so I was not allowed to eat barely anything. So I would sneak food all the time. And when it was like this treat. And it was also like the intrigue of it. So I had the dopamine hit and the intrigue of it. By the time I was on my own, it was like, I just wanted to eat everything because it was like this happy, sneaky thing I could do.
Yeah.
So I did. I got help. I read a lot. I think reading and podcasts, for those who aren't comfortable talking to a therapist, there's a lot of good reading and podcasts out there that can help you through that. And there's so much help in the weight space, good and bad, but in the mental health part of that. But my biggest, I think I really had to tackle it when I had kids, because I was like, I cannot pass this along to the next generation.
Yeah.
But I did a little bit. So here's a fun story. When my kids were little, I was in the newsroom and they were up. They came by the station after school one day. And so I had to go cut a news brief. And so they're like, Nina, we need you on the set. And so I said, hey, will you guys watch my kids? I'll be right back. And they were like 3 and 5. And so I run down to the set, and it was like down these steps, and I go and record the news brief, blah, blah, blah. Coming up tonight, you're never more than an hour away from the latest news. You're 24-hour news source, whatever. And I do my thing. And then I come back up, and I get about right to the top of the steps, and my daughter, with her pigtails and her big eyes, comes running at me. And she's got something in her hand, and she holds it up, and she goes, Mom, this is the best bagel ever. And she had a donut in her hand. But I had never given her a donut. And so she had a donut in her hand, best bagel ever. But the whole newsroom was like, that is child abuse. That is not okay that your child has never had a donut at age 3. So we try not to pass those things along. And I think that's why I got the help that I needed to really try to get a handle on it, to be healthier about it.
Sure. Yeah. Hey, I can relate in trying to, thinking that I can just simply dodge those things and circumstances of my life with my children, and sometimes the greatest thing I could do was the conversations around it. They're both aware that it's like, hey, eventually you might experiment with alcohol, and hopefully not down the road of drugs, especially now that fentanyl is in everything.
Right.
But if you do, and you find that after your 3rd drink you would kill someone for a 4th, it's probably time to give dad a call and say, I might have this common trait that is ran in our family. But that, I mean,
Well,
that's all we can do is just have the conversation and try to empower.
exactly. And I know that my success piece in my life, I have an addictive personality. I will glom on to something and go. Like if I am all in, and that is who I am. I have a very addictive personality. So I've never tried drugs. I've drank, and I luckily don't have a problem. I've gone through times where I probably drank too much, but it's never been a detriment. But I have never tried anything because I know I would like it. And so I had to really warn my kids. I'm like, you have your mom's addictive personality. I see it in you and the things that you do. Like you are all, and my son who's in med school, like he's so good at it. My daughter's in AI in New York, and one of them's in the Air Force. They're all like glom onto something and have to be the best. It's no different. It's you got to be careful with the way you were wired because you could do that. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, and I would think too, especially for you having competed in gymnastics, and my best friend, his wonderful wife, who's also one of my best friends, she competed up into college and through college. And I remember asking her one time, like, how did you deal with the fact that it's not a sport like in basketball where I would go out and, all right, I scored 15 points. I had 8 rebounds and 3 assists. Okay, I was producing on the defensive end as well. There you go. It's subjective. You're subjected to judges. And we already have a culture that's like, hey, what do we do? And where's our validation? We'll go to school, work hard, and hopefully that person gives you an A.
That's no, it is. I always say I've been judged since I was 4. I think I started competing. My first competitions, I was 5. So I have been judged and told what was wrong and I wasn't good enough since I was 5. So that definitely wears on you as a human, not in so many different ways. One, I do think athletes are great to hire, and you've probably a great testament of this, or to work with, because one, you know how to fall down and get up, and you're coachable. Like I can tell you, hey, try this, do that, and you would try it. You're not gonna be like, oh, you don't like me because you wanted to, like. You're not
I'm
crumble.
already gonna use tips after this. I'm gonna get that timeline going.
My team's building an app, so you'll be able to build your timeline, and then it'll populate. It'll give you a score of your resilience. So many times as you come back up over the line and how far apart your lines are, it'll give you a resiliency score, and it'll animate, and it's just fun.
Oh, I'll check it out.
I was trying to equate it to like superheroes, like Marvel and DC. I was trying to or villains and things too, but we didn't do that. But anyway, the tips are helpful. I'm rambling, but that's a fun way to think about the timeline's a fun way to think about that. But the big picture around, you're in your own head. Even, me as an athlete I'm in my own head. Everyone listening, you're taking this information and it's all going into your pieces of it, that you can move forward with. It's what you do with it that matters. And same thing with me with eating and the coaching piece. So athletes are great to hire, but they're also a little screwed up.
Well, and at the end of the day, it's, I think so much of that confrontation of self and the subconscious and trying to bring it into the conscious to change. Like we all would like to grow. And it just, at the end of the day, it's just good. It takes work. Like self-examination is tough, and getting honest. Like once you can get honest with yourself, it kind of makes things so much easier.
It does. And there'll be days when I'm real honest with myself and days where I'm not. It's like falling off the wagon with anything else. And every day's a good day to start again. And I always go back to, even on my worst days where I'm like, now I'm eating crap, or I'm not working, or I'm not doing what I should be doing. um, where I go to in my head is that blank timeline ahead. Or if I'm thinking about the story of my life, my book of my life, I'm on a page, all the pages ahead are blank. I'm like, I could just start today. All the pages ahead are blank. That timeline out, all of that's blank. I can decide what goes there. So I once told my kids, one of them was in a bad spot. The three of them were sitting down at dinner. They were in high school. And we were talking about, one of them had said something really dark. I was like, wait. Not okay. Before you would do something like that, hurt yourself or, take your life, I would hope you're bright enough to go hack into my bank account. Just hack into my bank account and steal my money and go do something crazy. Like go do crazy, weird things or try something totally different before you would just call it quits, And even that funny conversation with them made them think, oh, I could, like, there's always something else you could do.
Yeah.
It's always something else. Just totally change your world if you need to.
Yep. Well, before we get into random questions and I have you leave us with the final thoughts, people want to find out more about you, get a hold of you, maybe have you come speak at a conference or you be the conference for them. How can they do that?
Well, you can follow me on social, Nina Sossamon Pogue, and on Instagram, I'm Nina Speaks. And it's neat. There's a couple of Nina speakers. So it's Nina_SPEAKS. But you'll find me. You can follow me on Instagram. I put some daily inspiration, not really daily. I do a few a week of inspiration and motivational ideas and concepts and some clips of me speaking. So you'll hear some of these stories that I share. You can also find me on my website. My book is This Is Not the End. It's anywhere where you buy books. I also have a podcast. It's called This Seriously Sucks, the right podcast when life goes seriously wrong. It's in high. It's I sunset it at the beginning of this year, but there's a handful of season 1 and 2 are up there, and season 3 will come in September of this year. But it's got a lot of it's other people's stories, kind of like you do. Yeah. In mine, it's people who 10 years past a big this. I have them talk about how they got out of it, but similar concept to yours. But you can find me that way. And if you'd like me to speak at your conference, any of my social media or my website, reach out to me. You can DM me directly or go through. It says Book Nina. And I'd be happy to come speak to a group near you and share some of these concepts.
Awesome. Well, of course, for the listener or watcher, the link to Nina's website is in the podcast description. So click it, get connected, reach out. We love that stuff, right? Please, our DMs are open to good stuff. Go ahead.
All the time.
All
or
right.
bad stuff.
No, that's a quick delete for me. All right, here we go. Fun random questions. Best and worst advice you ever received?
Wow, that's a tough one. Best advice I ever received was from a guy I worked for, and he said, "What's your say-do ratio?" And he said, "Watch that." And he's like, "Do you do what you say you're going to do? Give yourself a number." So really great advice, because in my life, I really keep track now of my say-do ratio. Do I actually do what I say I'm going to do? So that's some of the best advice I ever got. Neat way to self-reflect. Worst advice I ever got. In college, I had a college professor told me that I could never go. He just said, not that I could never. He said, don't bother trying to get a job in television because you're too short and your family is not well enough connected.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So the first time I had my first big billboard out towards the interstate, I did take a picture of it and send it to him with a little note at the bottom of it. All nice, very passive aggressive. Yeah.
No, I love it. Every now and then in life, like, hey, it's okay to accept that we have to give someone the middle finger. Sometimes it's warranted.
I think at the time I put scripture. I'm not super churchy these days, but I think at the time I put scripture on it too for him, just to kind of take it home.
I like it. You mentioned DC and Marvel earlier, and I am a comic book kid. If you could have one superpower, what would it be and why?
Oh, I know this one well. I want to be a shapeshifter.
Oh.
Because I kind of want to fly, but I kind of want to do things. Invisibility has always been big for me too, but I would want to be a shapeshifter. We have this discussion in my family all the time. So that is mine. Because then I could be a dolphin and swim, and then I could be a bird and fly. I could be different people. Shapeshifter.
I love that. That's cool. No one said that in all the years I've been doing random questions. No one's ever said that answer. So
invisibility is a number 2, just so I could go through the world kind of.
That scares me too much.
Yeah.
Yeah. Invisibility.
So what's yours?
or when people say they want to read someone's mind, like that stuff just
No.
scared, like,
I don't want to know that.
Like, yeah, I don't want to get into places where it's like, no. I know what I needed. Mine's always been healing, and it's not so much like prevent someone from like a total illness. And the reason I say it, both my grandmas, I was there in the room when they passed, and it'd just be like to be able to ease the pain of something. So
That's a great one.
I guess healing in a way, or I don't know, but that's a little too God complex too at the same time. Like I have healed you, and I don't know.
Hey, it's our superpower. We can make whatever we want.
Right.
Yeah.
Here's we'll do. Do you have an interesting hobby or personal interest that you don't usually talk about that people might be surprised?
Yeah, I sort of have this. I have a couple. I think two things. One, I have a thing that I'm doing right now. I'm working on my handstand. So I've been really into working on my handstand. I've gotten up to like 30 seconds, but my goal is by my birthday in December to be able to hold a handstand for a minute. I'll be 58. So I just think that's cool. But no, the thing that people will be surprised, the thing that I do, I love to build sandcastles. It's one of the reasons I like the beach. So when I'm in a bad place and I go like just need to get away, I will sit on the beach and build sandcastles. And I'll hit the tide. I'll check the tides to get it right for hours, like giant, huge drip castles that go on and on and on. All by myself.
I love it. That's so
I'm
cool.
that weird lady sitting there in a bathing suit making drip castles.
I think it's awesome. I'm a big Lego builder, so for me, there's just something that about my hands and having to focus to do this thing that it's just like it's the easiest way for me to be present in something.
Yes, we're big in Legos in our family too. I actually use Lego in my keynote as an example of epic change. I call it from blocks to bytes. They've done such a good job, that company.
Oh, I love it. That's great. Let's go. One last one. I'll give you the final thoughts. Yeah, I'll do this one. What's one thing you tell your childhood self?
I've thought about this a lot. I actually asked this question on my podcast too, and it changes sometimes. But these days, I think I would tell my childhood self that life is long. Life is long, and you have plenty of time to change and do and get things wrong. You don't have to get it all right. Life is long. Yeah. You don't have to get it right the first time even. Like, just try things.
Yeah. Well, this is where I give you the floor. Anything else you would like to share before we end? Words of encouragement, anything?
I'll just end. I've said this earlier and I'll say it again. It's probably the most important thing I can share with an audience like yours that's looking for some guidance and maybe going through a tough time. It's okay to not be okay. We all heal at different times. It's just not okay to stay that way. And whatever you're feeling right now, you're not going to feel that way 5 years from now. 5 years from now, whatever you're in the middle of, it's going to be a story you tell. It is not going to feel like it does right now. It's going to feel different 5 hours from now, and it's going to feel different 5 days, weeks, months from now. But 5 years from now, whatever you're going through is not going to feel at all like it does right now. You just got to keep moving through it.
Nina, thank you so much. This has been a pleasure.
So nice to meet you, Jason. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. We'll have to keep in touch. And for the listener out there, remember, no outside solutions to inside problems, and keep knocking doors down.